Welcome back to the Two Comma Club podcast. Today, Chris and I are joined by Chad Thibodeaux. I'm really excited about this episode. He's a business coach and business strategist, and we got connected on Instagram. So, Chad, if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing with everybody what it is that you do to help or add value to what they have going on, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, guys. So I'm a business coach and launch strategist. And basically what that means is I help people start, sell, and scale. And when you take those three pillars, start, that's where I got my start, right? So I was a pastor for 19 years and I loved it. And was able to pastor some pretty large churches. And the last several years of my ministry, I used to travel the world and I would help these churches turn around and wrote a book called The 90-Day Turnaround and did some pretty cool things with him, and I ended up getting a divorce about, I don't know, 11, 12 years ago. And divorce and church world doesn't really mix. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, like, well, what's next? Like, what's my next step? And so I started studying a buddy of mine. His name was Casey Graham. Casey was a former pastor and he launched a company called the Rocket Company. And he started building online courses for pastors, trying to help them become better speakers. So I reached out to him and I'm like, you can't make any money doing that, right? He's like, well, he goes, we made $2.1 million on day one when we launched. I was like, what? And then he went on a couple years later to sell his company for $4 million. And I'm like, well, geez, I mean, if Casey can do it, I can do it. And so I just sort of hacked everything that he did. And when I first left the ministry and first got in the marketing world, I was just helping pastors who wrote books take their book, turn it into an online course, and get it out to the marketplace. And so I did that for a while and made lots of people lots of money. I was broke as a joke. And I'll save you the horror story, but I was trying to figure out like what's next. And through that process, I learned about funnels and started building a ton of funnels. And I got recognized by ClickFunnels as being one of the best funnel builders in the entire world. In fact, a top 30 funnel builder was invited to Boise, Idaho, to work with Russell Brunson himself to build funnels for his book. I got an award as a top 6 designer, meaning my designs were one of the top 6 that he had ever seen in the entire ClickFunnel industry. And I should have been really excited, but God, I was ticked because like I didn't want to build funnels the rest of my life. Like, what am I doing? And so I took the knowledge and information that I learned from hacking Casey, took the awards that I'd gotten from Russell Brunson as being a really, really good funnel builder, and said, okay, well, what's next? And what I learned was there was a massive void. At least back then there's not anymore. Back then there was a massive void between people who could communicate to others how to get up and running. And so what I did was I just took my experience from the pastoral days, like, where I take complex things and made them simple, where I'd communicate information to people, whether they were 3 or 103, and I'd give hope, I would inspire them. And I took that and took the framework that I used to use in my church consulting, brought it to the secular world, and I launched my coaching business. But the one thing that I knew that I could do was I could help people start. And so when I first got into the coaching world, that's what I did was I helped people start. In fact, my company was called Catapult, and that was our tagline: "We help you start." After a while of doing that, helped hundreds and hundreds, actually helped thousands of people start their company. I was like, there's a big void in the marketplace. Like these entrepreneurs, they don't know how to sell. And so they're looking at other people who know how to sell, but those tactics that they teach at those high level sales, they don't work. So I wrote a concept called selling from the small stage. Like how can I help people learn the etiquette of selling 1-to-1 or selling on a small stage, like 1 to 10, 1 to 12? How can I help them sell? And then once I did that, I was like, that's great, but they have no idea how they're going to take it to the next level. So that's when I started my third program, which is Cavu, and that's helping people scale their business. So that's just a little snapshot of what I've been doing over the last 11, 12 years.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
Jill and I both have a faith background. We're both Christians, and I love to
Oh,
hear
good.
people who are in business, and I just
Yeah.
love to hear people who are wanting to help people. I think it's
Yeah.
just natural, as with your faith, you want to help others naturally.
Yeah.
And I think in the business world, to me, it's a really easy way to connect and help people.
Yeah.
Also, just share your faith and just share, just what you're doing, and I love that you're doing that. So,
Well, here, let's talk about that just for a second, because that's an
please, yeah,
interesting topic I don't get
please.
to talk a lot about a lot. So a lot of times people confuse faith with religion, right? And so, like Russell Brunson is a Mormon, right? So he talks a lot
Yeah,
about his Mormon faith. And then, there's lots of people who are evangelical Christians, and there's lots of Islamic people out there. Um, but I try to separate those. There's a massive difference between faith and religion, right? So religion
Amen.
many times is man-made, and that's why lots of people don't like it. But faith is deeper, because like faith is simply believing that there is something larger than yourself, and you don't really know. That's the whole point of faith, right? But it's not just believing that there's something larger for yourself, but it's living as if there's something larger than you. And I
Yeah.
think that what that does is that shapes so many things, because if you think it's all about you, then when someone does a chargeback on you, you're going to get all frustrated and aggravated, maybe even take legal recourse against them. If you think it's all about you, when something doesn't go your way, and you're in the dip of entrepreneurship, and Lord knows we get there a lot, then you're going to lose confidence and frustration, and you're going to lose resolve, and sort of the nasty part comes out of you. But if you believe in something larger than yourself, and you live for something larger than yourself, then generosity sort of can be the de facto output of your life. And I just believe in the give method, right? And I've taught this for years, that the Bible says in Luke 6:38 that if you give, it should be given unto you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And I think that as entrepreneurs, whether you're faith-based, Christian-based, or Muslim-based, or Mormon-based, or whatever religion you tie into, you can be faith-based. Live for something greater than yourself, and let everything that you do spew out of a plethora of generosity. And I just believe that if you give, it'll be given back to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That's the law of the harvest. You don't just plant one kernel of corn to get one kernel of corn back. You plant a kernel of corn to get an entire bushel of corn back. And that's what happens when you live by faith, you give by faith, you're generous to others, and you give without that expectation, you just get blessed.
I love that. And I was just,
Yeah.
one of the things I believe, you plant in the morning, you plant in the afternoon, you don't know which is going to be. So the thing is, if you're planting seeds, or you're trying to impact others, or just love on people, or give value away, you don't know what's going to come back. You just don't. And I was just this week, I was working on some projects and some
Yeah.
deals. I thought it was going to be an easy one. It was
Yeah.
super hard. One was a slam dunk, and my mind became, so you just don't know. So I think you said plant those seeds, and I love
Well,
that.
Chris, one of the things too you got to be careful of too, though, is a lot of times, because of the law of the harvest, people give to get, right? People give to get. And I don't like that. I think you should give to give. In fact, one of the principles, like if you ever study the give method, one of the principles I teach in the give method, like one of the things we've done now for a decade, is none of my lead magnets are mandatory, name, email, phone number, submit. None of them. You can give me your name, email, phone number, and submit, but you can also just submit and get my lead magnet without giving me that information. And so I try to give a ton of stuff away without any string back. And what that's done is it's generated for me a very small database. Okay. I've done millions and millions and millions of dollars in revenue over the last 12 years. I've only got 7,000 people in my database, but all 7,000 people in my database want to hear from me. So I have email open rates of 72, 74, 76%, right? Things that are unheard of, right? When I have a launch, the people who follow me actually want to follow me, and so they like really, really good things happen. And so I've always just believed that if you lead with generosity, you help without a string attached, that you just get blessed, man. You just get blessed, and you may not have
I
the
agree.
largest
Can't agree
following,
more. I really
but the
can't
following
agree
that you
more with
get is
that.
very,
So,
very, very loyal.
one of the challenges I have, just being honest, is just giving a lot of value away to folks, but they're just not taking the advice, or they're just not plugging in. Obviously, in your group, how are you dealing with that? Is you're giving away advice or giving yourself away, and then people aren't, acting on those things? How do you deal with that, or how do you cope with that?
Yeah. So one of the big fears in the industry is, how much is too much? And I always tell people, err on the side of too much. Err on the side of too much. Because at the end of the day, people don't pay for your information. They don't. They can get better information on YouTube. Okay. They don't pay for the what, they pay for the how. Right. And so I teach people what to do all day long, and then they pay me for how to do it. And so, what I would just really encourage uh, the audience watching this, what I'd really encourage them to do is um, have an abundant mindset, not a scarcity mindset. So, scarcity says, "Oh
Amen.
my gosh, if I give too much, then why would they pay me?" And what I would tell you is, if what you can share with them in a PDF download, or what you could share with them in an hour podcast, or what you could share with them on a YouTube video is all you got, well, then you probably should go study more, right? Because you're playing in the shallow end of whatever you're doing. And truth of the matter is you have an abundance of, you have a plethora of knowledge, you have a plethora of information that you've gathered over the years that you can share with people. And what happens is like, people have this psychological mindset that if when you share a lot of information, they're like, gosh, if that's what they're giving me for free, I can only imagine how good it is when I pay them. Right. And so I've never had a situation where somebody said, oh, great, that's wonderful information. Thank you for that knowledge. Thank you for that information. I think I'm going to take this. I'm going to go do it. I'm not going to pay you. No, it's just the opposite. The more I give, the more I blow them away with my strategy, my knowledge, and my generosity. It now separates me from the competition. It doesn't put me in, oh, you're one of those guys. No, now they're like, dang, man, who's this Chad Thibodeaux guy? Right. And that's why I say I think I'm one of the best and most successful marketers nobody's ever heard of. Right. And the reason is because I don't do macro marketing, I do micro marketing. It's the difference between, casting a wide net and fishing off the dock. Right. And I like to fish off the dock. And I do that by giving all my best stuff away for free, right? Building rapport and relationship with people, and then now you've done everything. Let me see if I can give you an example. Okay, so this is my phone here. Okay, on one side, and many of your coaches can probably experience this. On one side is your coach, and on the other side is the audience, right? The audience that you're trying to build. Okay, and so what happens is, as a coach, you try to sling something over, try to catch one, and bring them over to your side, right? You bring them over to your side one at a time. And I just never thought that was a good strategy. What I like is just get over on their side. Just get over and be one of them. Love on them. Talk to them. Immerse yourself in them. Build relationships with them. Give without a string attached. And then what happens is when you're on this side, it's easier then to bring them, to carry them over with you. And I just think the best marketers in the world, when they start small, that's what they do. So let me put my daddy hat on for a second and give you the biggest and most controversial warning that I think you and all your listeners need to hear. One of the biggest mistakes I think that small business owners make, especially when they're first starting out, one of the biggest mistakes I believe that they make is patterning and learning after the big names in the industry, people like Russell Brunson. I think Russell Brunson's a great guy, but you can't when you're first starting out, you can't do what he's doing. Okay, he'll tell you to do a live webinar every Thursday, spend $1,000 a day on ads to build it up. Most people that I know that are first starting out, they don't have $1,000 a day to spend on ads. They can't risk that. They don't have that. They may have $50 a day, but they don't have $1,000 a day. So what I tell people is, don't look at Russell Brunson where he's at now. Go back and look what Russell Brunson did when he first started and copy that. Copy that, because he wasn't blowing $1,000 a day. What he was doing is he was being super generous and he was giving stuff away. He was learning like crazy. He was networking. He was going to all the events. He was rubbing shoulders with people. He was bootstrapping stuff. That's what he was doing. And when you're first starting out, that's what you have to do. Don't throw money. Don't throw money at your marketing hoping that it sticks. Throw knowledge and information and intellectual property at it, and I promise you it will stick. That's what all the big guys did when they first started out.
That's
That's
solid
awesome.
advice. That's good.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of different angles that you touched on there in terms of like how beginners can get discovered and things of that nature. And so I guess one of the things that I'm curious to know about is, in your journey, what is it that you did to get out there and ultimately get the customers that you ended up creating relationships with and having them in your ecosystem? If you want to save time on watching all the episodes, but still get all the gold nuggets that we find from interviewing these 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs, then you can get all of that inside of the 2 Comma Club newsletter. Just go to 2ccnewsletter.com and subscribe.
Okay, so I'm in Boise, Idaho. I just get awarded an award from Russell Brunson as being a top 30 designer. He selected one of my designs as one of the top 6. In fact, my webinar funnel, he actually wrote in his book that it's the coolest thing he's ever seen, right? And he uses my webinar funnel template for a lot of his perfect webinars. And I didn't want to do that. So I came back to Phoenix. That's where I live. I came back to Phoenix after that event. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to get seen? Because nobody knows me, and I didn't have any money to spend on ads. So what I did was, in fact, this article or this ad is still in the ClickFunnels group. You can go there and search it and you can find it. So what I did was I went inside the ClickFunnels group and said, "Hi, I'm Chad Thibodeaux. I'm a business coach, launch strategist. I'm a ClickFunnels top 30 designer, and I need Russell had asked me to build 10 new templates for his cookbook." But I didn't want to just create a template. So I went in there and said, hey, I'm looking for 10 single moms or nonprofits that I can build a template, a ClickFunnels template for. You can have it absolutely free, but I got to be able to give it to Russell to use in his cookbook. If you'd like to be one of those 10, just shoot me a DM or comment here. Well, you can go back and look at that, and you can see that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people comment on that post. And I ended up getting I don't know, 350 applications for me to build them a free funnel. Obviously, I couldn't do that. So I got the advice of, well, why don't you start an internship? Why don't you teach other people how to build funnels and let them build the funnels for the other people? So I did. So I started this little thing called the CF Design Academy, absolutely free, where if you wanted to learn how to build funnels and you wanted to or be a coach and you wanted to do that for a living, but you didn't have the money to get coaching, well, just come into my academy. I won't charge you not even a penny. And then in exchange, I'm going to put you on a group of about 8 people. And that group of 8 is then going to take one of these nonprofits and you're going to become their marketing firm for 12 weeks, absolutely free, no cash exchange or whatever. And I thought maybe I'd get 4, 5, 6, 10 people applying for that internship. And I ended up getting over 200. We selected 81 people my very first time. But
Nice.
remember, nobody knows me. So I'm in there helping for free, using my little give method, helping, broke as a joke, have no idea how I'm going to pay rent next month, but I'm helping all these people. And then all of a sudden in the ClickFunnels world, they're saying, "Hey, we need a funnel builder. Who do you know?" Well, now I have 81 people that I'm giving all this advice to for free, has now become my mouthpiece. And they're in there. "Oh, you got to go to Chad, go to Chad, go to Chad, go to Chad, go to Chad." And then they're saying, "Hey, we need a coach. Who do you know?" And then I got 81 people saying, "Chad, Chad, 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 Chad." So my inbox went from, 1 to 2 inquiries a month to 10 to 12 inquiries a day. Right? A day. All because of the give method. Given, it should be given unto you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken down, and running over. That's just what happened to me. And so what I encourage people to do is follow that method. Help. Go to a group of people or go to a Facebook community or school community, or whatever community you want to go to, that has your ideal clients in it, and just help. Don't proselytize. Help. So in other words, somebody's going to go in there and they're going to ask a question. Answer it. Answer it. Answer it again. Answer it again. Answer it again. Answer it again. And before too long, 3, 4, 5, 6 days go by, you've now been very active inside of that group. It's not going to be too long before people jump in your DM. Or if you have a thread of somebody, you're going back and forth 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, just say, "Hold on, I'm gonna shoot you a DM," and then get into their DMs and you can help some more. And then the relationship that you build by helping makes an easy transition into your business. And so that's what I teach all my people at the very beginning. It's not about funnels, it's about relationships. Get into a group of people who have got your ideal client, go help like crazy, become a big fish in a small pond, great things will happen. That's always where I tell people to start. Always.
I love that. I love that. It gives away kind of your nurture sequence. I love how you're doing it. I think it does pay dividends. I do believe, you give, it should be given back, but that should be the main purpose. And I love how you're doing that. And I love how you're giving back away. I guess you talk a little bit about kind of your past. I'm excited to hear about the future. What's some of your goals or some of the things you guys are shooting for? What are you putting out now? Obviously, if you've done this in the past, I'm sure you're not changing strategies. How are you helping people? What are you trying to give away now and promote and look forward to here in the future this year?
Yeah, so it's interesting because after a while, I mean, everything has a life cycle, right? So, like when you first start, you see some growth, and then you hit a plateau, and then, if you're not careful, you're going to hit the decline, and then ultimately die. And so, you have to consistently, not reinvent yourself, like starting over, but the law of momentum is new, improved, improving, right? So you always have to come up with something new. Um, and so, one of the things that I discovered, especially in this world of coaching, is like things shift so fast. I mean, they just shift so fast that if you're not careful, the stuff that you create is going to become outdated like that. So you always have to stay fresh and new. Okay. But sometimes the stuff that you used to do 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago comes back in fashion. Like, for instance, let me give you an example. So when I first started in coaching 13 years ago, everything was about community, right? Build a Facebook group, go in and love on them, whatever. And then high ticket coaching came and took over that. And then communities went away. Well, now communities are back, right? Communities are back. So one of the things that we're trying to do now is trying to help people create recession proof businesses by creating mid ticket. And so we saw for a while that high ticket was there, 35, 45, $50,000 stuff. And that still is thriving. That still is thriving if you have agency, right? So if you can work with some large companies and you can do everything done for you, you can still charge a ton of money. But high ticket coaching, it's really hard to break into. If you're into it, you could still do it, but it's really hard to break into. So we sort of found our niche in what we call mid ticket. Okay. Mid ticket is where you create a program that you can sell between $3,000 and $12,000, and you can implement that between 60 and 120 days. Okay. We've just sort of found a niche right here. Okay. Because then you can go into both worlds. So if they come in for $3,000 and you're helping them with something, then it's easy to like get like a white label SaaS, like a high level or whatever, and then build recurring revenue off of those people that you help by saying, hey, I'm going to help you. It's $3,000, and then you know what? I'm going to give you all the tools. Jump into my SaaS for $197 a month, okay? And it's going to have everything you want. Now you've created recurring revenue, okay? And then if you help them at the higher end, like the $12,000, it's not very difficult to say, hey, I have a SaaS or I have an agency I've ever done for you. You're already paying me a couple $1,000 a month. Let's just keep this relationship on and going. So what I'm trying to do is almost like what I call the accordion method, where I start in the middle and then I can take people both ways. And so I call it mid-ticket mastery. That's sort of what I'm working on right now, and just help people finding their niche in a $3,000 to $12,000 coaching program, and then being able to create both high ticket and low ticket recurring revenue for them on both sides.
I love that. It's so important in your business to have recurring revenue.
Yeah,
Basically, every entrepreneur wants some version of financial
yeah.
freedom, and the
Hmm.
way that comes is by having more recurring revenue than you have monthly expenses. And so that's really powerful
Well,
stuff
that's
there.
that's the ultimate freedom, right?
Hmm.
Mhm.
Without a
The
doubt.
ultimate freedom, right? And everybody lives for that. And programs like Go High Level have made that available to you as well. Affiliate marketing is a fantastic way to do that. I haven't used ClickFunnels in a couple of years because I created my own little program, but I still get like $1,200 a month in recurring revenue from ClickFunnels from affiliate marketing. Nowhere what it used to be because everybody ditched me and went to High Level, but I still get that money, and it's just like it's free money. It's free money, and so if you can create recurring streams of revenue, that's awesome. So communities are a good way to do that. SaaS programs are a really good way to do that. Agencies are a really good way to do that. But to be honest with you, even payment plans are a really good way to do that, right? If you have some kind of like uh, coaching program or whatever where you don't have to do one-on-one, you can do one-to-many, and let's say that you're $3,600, but they can't afford $3,600, and you want to put them in for whatever, a payment. Even payment plans are a really good source of recurring. I love that ongoing cash flow. It's just fun.
Yeah, it's extremely vital for the health of your business and everything. What has been your experience with the first few times that you experienced recurring revenue in your business?
Yeah, so when I first got into it, I got recurring revenue honestly from a scarcity mentality. I was afraid to charge money, to be honest with you. And so I had a really good coaching program, and I'm just like, you know what? It's just, I probably should have charged 10, 12 grand for it, but I was a wuss and I charged um, $297 a month. And I got 297 because that's what ClickFunnels was charging for their enterprise account. And so I'm like, okay, well, if they can get people to pay for it, I can get people to pay for it. So I got people in it at 297 a month, and I grew it relatively fast. Right, it was a program I called Tribe 100, and I put them in pods of 8. So just what I was doing on my design academy, I just ultimately started charging for that. And so I got pod A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, right? So that was 7 pods of 8 people. 56 people were in there. All 56 people were paying me $297 a month. Well, you do the math on that. That's $180,000 a year, right? And I was a nobody, right? I was a nobody. Nobody knew me, and But that's how I started. So I started recurring revenue, honestly, from a position of scarcity where I wasn't giving a software or I wasn't giving something I didn't have to work. I worked my tail off coaching 8 pods a week. I worked my tail off, but I had that residual revenue. Once I got to that point where I knew that, okay, I can pay all my bills. And the nice thing about low ticket like that, 297, is if somebody cancels on you, it's not the end of the world. When I was doing high ticket, 25,000 and 50,000 bucks, somebody cancels on you, it's a lot of money, right? A lot of money. And so, I started doing that. But once I got enough money where I knew all my bills were going to be paid, I wasn't going to be hurting. I wasn't going to be homeless. That's a whole nother story. I wasn't going to be homeless. Then what that did was that gave me the confidence to do something bigger and better, and gave me the fuel that I needed in order to take some risk that I wouldn't have taken if I didn't have that money. So that's how I started. I just started with group coaching.
I love that. I think it's
Yeah.
so, like you said, giving that value away and then just connecting with people. Like you said, you said it yourself. I was a nobody, but you were somebody to a lot of people by giving that value away, and you were building that tribe and those raving fans. And I love that. So I think it's huge. I think social media and the internet's great, but man, it doesn't replace relationships and connecting with people on a one-on-one level and giving value away. And I love that, Chad. I do. I do.
Yeah.
That leads into one of my next questions. Unique ability. Always have to talk about your superpower. I think a lot of people think they have a lot of strengths in several areas, but I really believe in one or two things you're really good at and you love doing. What do you think's your superpower, your unique ability, your one, maybe two things that you're really
Yeah.
good at
Mhm.
and you're able to give away to other people and help them?
So anytime you have a superpower, it's got to be connected to a solution, and that solution's got to solve a problem, right? So we can all have superpowers in various areas, but it's got to be connected somewhere somehow. So what I do is I break that down into 3 levels. Okay. So the first level is a skill, right? So if you're going to make money online as a coach, consultant, a strategist, a teacher, a mentor, an implementer, those are 6 ways you can make money online. Then you have to have some sort of skill, right? You have to be able to be good at something. Skills are learned from stuff from the past, right? That you then leverage for the future. So for me, I was a pastor for many years. I would stand on stages of thousands of people each and every weekend, communicate. And so I knew that I could communicate incredibly clearly, right? I knew I could take complex things and make them simple. So that was a skill that I had. I also knew that I knew marketing, I knew funnels, I knew copywriting, messaging. Those were all skill sets. Okay. That I learned in the past that I can leverage for the future. Then the second thing is you have to take that skill and move it to a system. Okay. Now, can I take my skill and create a logical and linear pathway to get a result for somebody? If I don't have a logical and linear pathway, then I'm not going to be able to make sense to my audience. I'm not going to be able to make sense to my client. Okay. So you can't have a superpower unless you have a skill and unless you have a logical and linear pathway. How am I going to get people from point A to point B in a step-by-step process where I can communicate? That's where all your intellectual property comes in. Okay, so this is what you're known for, is that particular thing. Then the superpower then is awesome. Now it's no longer hidden under a bushel. Now it can be illuminated. So what my superpower is I can spend 4 to 5 minutes with Chris or 4 to 5 minutes with John, just asking you some strategic questions. And then I can know your business better than you know it. And I can tell you exactly what to do, how to do, when to do it, where to do it, as good or better than anyone that I've ever met in my life. And so that I've identified that as my superpower. So then what happens is when I get on a call with somebody and I ask these strategic questions, I actually call this the Rev method because I used to be a reverend. I call it the Rev method. When I ask these strategic questions to get knowledge information from you, okay, then I ask other questions and to lead you to the promised land of like, oh my God, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Then I learned that I was the guy. I was the guy who did that. And because I was the guy who did that, you now have transferred your faith from the unknown to me. Okay. Oh my God, how am I going to do this? I don't know. Now you transferred your faith from that unknown, like, I don't know if I can, to like, okay, I think this guy could help me. Okay. So now I'm only selling one thing, and that's hope. That's it. Okay. Now I'm selling hope. You've transferred over to me, and you're like, I hope this guy, I think this guy, I know this guy can help me. Okay. So once I've used my ability to ask questions to get you to that point, then now what I do is I tell you, if I were you, here's what I think you should do. And I give you advice and information that you've probably not heard before, or if you heard it, you didn't hear it nearly as clearly as I can. And now all of a sudden I've illuminated something in your mind. You open up your wallet and you pay me. Okay. That's my superpower. is to be able to ask strategic questions to get you to an aha moment so you can transfer your faith from the unknown to me. Once I have the faith, once I know that I'm now the person, I can tell you exactly what you should do and how you should do it. And then you're like, whoa. And then I've created what's called the logical next step. Okay. The logical next step. The logical next step is not me saying, hey, so do you want to work together? No, the logical next step is John and Chris saying, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. How can we work together? Now my audience is coming to me asking me how we can work together, and I don't ever have to sell somebody, ever. I don't ever have to
That's
sell somebody.
awesome.
And that's my superpower. Yeah. But it
That's
starts with a
amazing.
skill, like you identifying what you're good at and then putting it in a system, a logical linear process. Okay. And then identifying uh, what you're really great at and then illuminating it so people can move their faith from the unknown to you. And once they do that, they just ask you what the next step is. Hey, let me send you an invoice. We'll get started on Monday.
Awesome. What would be a story that you could share of an example of when you were able to do that with one of your clients or somebody that you're just, helping or adding value to?
Yeah. I mean, I've got thousands of those situations. Um, let me give you one that I'll give you one that was recent. Okay. Um, so one that was recent was a gal here in the Phoenix area. We had connected in one of the community groups or whatever, and someone asked a question in the group, and I just went in and I helped. It was a really simple. It was a simple question, and then this person jumped in my DMs and said, "Hey, I really liked how you helped that person. Um, tell me more about what you do. We're looking for a coach." And so instead of immediately jumping onto me, you remember it's all about them because at the end of the day, John, nobody cares about you. I mean, people are watching
Yep.
this podcast today. They don't care about me. They don't care about you. They don't care about Chris. They care about themselves, right? And so this person asked me, "Hey, I may be looking for a coach. Tell me more about what you do." So I resisted the urge. In fact, I've got this written down everywhere. Resist the urge. I resisted the urge to do ego marketing, and I just asked some questions. Okay, well, before I tell you that, tell me a little bit about you. What do you do? Okay, great. Then I moved to the positive. Okay, well, what's going great? What's working well for you? Awesome. What keeps you up at night? They tell me, oh, what do you think you needed to fix that? Oh, okay. Do you mind if I give you some free coaching? Oh, I would love to give you some free coaching. Okay. Let's jump on a call and I'll give you some coaching, or I'll do it right in the DMs or whatever. And so was doing this with this particular person, and I hadn't even gotten to the free coaching part. I was just asking her some questions. And she goes, "You have brought so much clarity to me, more clarity than I've ever gotten. I just paid $25,000 for this coaching program, and I've learned more on this, little DM thread than I did in the entire $25,000 coaching." And what was so interesting was I hadn't even started coaching her yet. I just was asking really solid questions. And so learning the art of questions, and the nice thing with ChatGPT, they're the best. They're the best. And so you can go in and you can even prompt GPT to help you become a better coach by asking really good questions. What are some questions I should ask? And then tell it, no, those are too weak. Those are $10,000 a month. I'm looking for $100,000 a month questions. What are they? And then I'll give you better questions, and then you can use those. And so I just started asking her, asking her some questions. You got more clarity and things like that. And mind you, I still have yet to tell her one piece of coaching, and I've yet to tell her what I do. And she replies back with, "Gosh, I bet your coaching is really expensive, isn't it?" And I replied back, "Well, you should hope it's expensive. You need it to be expensive. Because if it's not expensive, everybody would hire me. If it's not expensive, then you wouldn't take me seriously." I said, "Of course it's expensive." I said, "It's $50,000 for the year." And she goes, "Well, I can't afford $50,000. I said, "And I can't afford to lower my rates." I said, "But what I can do is I can let you come in at $5,000 a month, okay, for 90 days. And if at the end of 90 days, you don't think it's worth the remaining money, you've gotten tons of help from me. I give you my best stuff in the first 90 days. I'll take the $15,000 and run. You can go your own way." Great. When she's well on her way. She gets into a month and a half of it, and she goes, "Would you give me a discount if I just paid the entire $50,000? I'm like, "Well, we give 10% off." Right. And so she was great. But that's the case. The case in point is when you help people, great things happen. Great things happen. When you sell people, you start the relationship on a slippery slope. But when you help people, you start the relationship from the position of reciprocity, and that's what I love.
I love that. I love the fact that, well, two things I just noticed, like I said, giving away value, and I appreciate
Yeah,
that a
yeah,
ton. And then the second thing was, which I noticed you first got on, I want to come back to, because this is big in my book, is just leading with vulnerability. And I
yeah,
think when you're vulnerable, you talked about divorce. I've been divorced, so I totally get that. But when
yeah.
you lead with that, I mean, most Americans, more than half Americans have been divorced at our age. I'm not saying our age. I'm 49. I'm not sure how old you guys are, but I think leading with vulnerability, it tends to lend others to be vulnerable in the front end as well. And then you're able to connect on a much deeper level. And I like that about you. Obviously, you have a pastor background, so I get that. And that's probably part of your training. But help me out where just give, like you said, the giving has been huge for you. But obviously, there's been some hurdles. You talked about the divorce for one. What are some major things that most people would consider failures that really, at the time, was I'm sure was tough for you, but they will help you, you know, grow and help you be a better coach and a better leader? What are some opportunities, some things that have happened to you like that?
So this is what's interesting about vulnerability. There's a difference between being vulnerable and being authentic.
Hmm.
Big difference. I don't recommend people being all that vulnerable with people they don't trust,
Hmm.
because it's very easy to slip from vulnerability to victim. And it's very easy to move from sharing something that you can connect with and then just vomiting all over people, right?
Hmm.
Um, People like happy endings, right? And sometimes you have to bring them through your journey to get to the happy ending. But I prefer authenticity a lot more than I do vulnerability. Okay. Um, there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable, but you need to have the right audience for that. Okay. So to me, it all goes back to value. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit. This is one of the most misinterpreted and misunderstood concepts in all the marketing is what is value. Okay. Value is not you giving information away. Value actually has nothing to do with you. Value is the transformation that your prospect is looking for and the information you share that they believe is going to be able to get them a result. It has nothing to do with you, it has to do with them. So if you understand that value is all about the perception of your prospect, now your story takes on an entirely different meaning, right? So in my story, I have an entire book called I Am Enough where I write my entire story. I didn't share with you all of that because it's not needed, because it wouldn't be valuable to you, right? It would take up too much time. What was valuable to you was I knew that I was going to come talk about generosity, and I knew I was going to talk about the give method. So the part about me being a pastor and me being divorced and me having some struggle at the beginning, even though I didn't get all into it, that was the back of the magnet that I knew would repel the audience that I don't want to listen to me, but would attract the audience that I do want to listen to me. Okay. So then the give method, so that's the piece of the story that I knew would attract and repel. And the give method is the unique mechanism that I know not a lot of people would understand. Okay. And then the um, the value piece that I was just sharing with you, that value is not really anything that you do; it's what the perception of your prospects are. That's sort of the linear line, okay, that you have to draw. So anytime you're sharing your story, whether it be your origin story, your struggle, your tragedy, whatever. Be authentic, not necessarily vulnerable. Be vulnerable enough where people can trust you, but don't be so vulnerable enough where now they feel like they have to help you, because if they feel like they have to help you, they're never going to pay. They're never going to pay you. But if they feel like your life is perfect, they're never going to pay you either, because they don't want to pay somebody whose life is perfect. Okay, so there's a balance between those two that you have to learn, and you only learn that by sharing your story time and time again. I would tell you that if you can't share your story in 90 seconds or less, it's too long. Okay, if you
I
got a
like that.
45-minute keynote speech, okay, then 10% can be your story, so 4.5 minutes. But most people don't have that long. Okay, so you got to be able to share it just a little bit. So let me Now let me answer the question that you asked. So that's the background. The question that you asked is there have been all kinds of highs and lows, right? And what you learn is that sometimes what your low is your prospect's high. Okay? And there's a rule that I use in coaching that I teach all my clients is that in order to be a successful coach, you have to have a life that your prospects would trade you for. So if you're not living a life that they want, they're not going to hire you and pay you. Okay, so when I first started and I was broke as a joke and I made the grand total of $14,600 the year after my divorce, okay, I was about as low gets. Nobody was going to pay me for coaching when I was at 14,600. So I had to drive Lyft and Uber, okay, at night. I had to learn a skill of funnel building that I knew was transferable, that at the end of the day, I could just build some funnels if I had to. So I had to learn that skill. Remember skill, system, superpower? Okay. So when you're at a position where nobody will trade their life for you, you have to dive in on skill. So that's what I did. But then when I started my coaching program and I did my 297 a month thing, I then made almost $250,000 in 90 days. Okay. So now I have the next step, which is, okay, how did I do that? Thus my logical linear process. That's my pattern. So now $250,000 for most people, if I told them, hey, I made $250,000 in coaching, they're not going to be like, oh, let me hire you. But there's a remnant of people that would be like, how did you go from broke to $250,000? Now I've positioned myself with those people because they would trade their life for me. A lot of other people wouldn't trade it. You only made $250,000. That's nothing. That's not my audience. My audience now are the people that would trade their life for me. So now I was the Russell Brunson to that group of people. Okay. And so that was my high. That was their, right. So then when I went and got my first 2 Comma Club award within 18 months of being broke, then what happened was I was more successful when I was at 250K than I was at $1 million. Because when I was at $1 million, it comes with all kinds of infrastructure. Now I had payroll. Now I had rent. Now I had taxes. Now I had all kinds of stuff, right? And my profit margin was actually less at $1 million than it was at $250,000, right?
Yeah.
And so I was actually at my low. I remember standing on stage getting I have 4 2 Comma Club awards. I remember standing on stage getting my first 2 Comma Club award. Being so broke, like I'm not even sure I could pay for this hotel I'm staying in. Okay. So I was at my low, but there were then a lot more people who would trade places. They would be like, I would love to be at a low where I made $1 million. Right. Okay. So then what happens is you build another audience that they would trade places with you. Right. So that's important. And so with that being said, then as you scale has a whole nother set of responsibilities. So what I learned was there was a sweet spot in my business. Okay. And here's where it is. I hate employees. Okay. I remember Alex Sharfin. I don't know if you guys know who Alex is. Alex comes to me and said, Chad, if you would let me build you a system, you would be making $20 million a year. And I remember going back to him and asking him about what that system looked like. And I told him, that system that you want to create for me is amazing. But that's why I got into entrepreneurship, so I don't have to lead like that. I had the big staff before. I had all that stuff. And so I knew that I wasn't that guy. I didn't want 50 employees. I didn't want a job. So what I've learned about myself is my sweet spot is 2 or 3 people on my team that do not rely on me for their full-time living. Okay? That can help me, that love me, that have my back, that I can trust, and that I can rely on. 2 or 3 people. That when I go through a dip, and we all have them, I have infrastructure, I have people in my ecosystem that I can turn to and I can rely on, and now loneliness is not there any longer. Okay? But that means doing revenue between 500,000 and 1.5 million. That's the range. Because once you get past that 1.5 million, you need a whole nother set of infrastructure. But I've learned that my sweet spot is between $500,000 a year and 1.5 million a year. That's my sweet spot. Okay. So as long as I stay in my sweet spot and I know what my zone of genius is, then the highs aren't all that high and the lows aren't all that low. But I have people with me to celebrate when I hit a high, and I have people with me to keep me from killing myself when I'm low. And that's super, super important. It's not difficult to build a $500,000 a year business. It's not even difficult to build a $1.5 million business. Okay. What's difficult is being able to sustain it in the long term. And so that's just sort of where I'm at. I just learned where my sweet spot was. $500,000 to 1.5. I built a business. I built structure. I've built things for me to live in that particular world. I'm never going to get a $10 million a year award because I don't want one, because I don't want the headache that comes with it. I'm super smart enough to build a business like that, but I don't want one. And so every once in a while, when I want something a little bit bigger than me, I'll go help some large companies. So recently, I was helping a company called Elite CEOs. I took over all their coaching and redesigned their entire coaching program. And I was a marketing strategist for a company called Bad Marketing, where I got in and got to be in the real world for a little bit. But 95% of my time, I like staying right in my little zone of $500,000 to 1.5 million.
I love that. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
There's so many different people that I've talked to through this podcast and everything that, they have their really big goals and everything. But one of the things that I find that is sorely missing in the entrepreneur space, especially the world we're involved in, is like people understanding like where's that sweet spot? Like where do you have the life that you want to have combined with hitting the goals that you want to have, and not going above and beyond that simply because you're chasing a revenue goal, but rather being able to, enjoy life as well. So that's
So
fantastic.
okay, let me take 2 minutes and talk about that, because I think I'm very positioned in order to speak to that, because I've helped over 5,000 people start, scale, and sell. You go back to the Bible, go back to Genesis. Jethro, the father of Moses, told him to take the children of Israel and divide them up into camps. Do you remember this part? He said, I want you to divide them up into tens, into hundreds, and into thousands. And then he said, I want you to put a leader over that tribe, and which means leaders have the ability to lead tens, hundreds, or thousands. Okay. And there's nothing wrong. If you have the ability to lead 10, then lead with all your heart and mind. If you have the skill set to lead 100, then do that. And then if you have a skill set to lead thousands, then do that as well. So one of the things that I do with my clients when they're trying to figure out like what kind of business should I do is I help them figure out like tens, hundreds, thousands, right? So we figure out like, are you the CEO, CMO, or COO? Okay, what seat do you fill? Like CEO is you just want to give some strategic advice. You want to have a full team of managers and leaders. You want to make a steady salary, but you're never going to get super rich. Okay, you want a steady salary, and you want to be the face place, maybe speak on stages, write a book, come up with curriculum, whatever, but you're this guy. But you want a big infrastructure below you that can run the ship. COO is you don't care if anybody knows who you are. You just, you want to make all the back end infrastructure work. Or CMO is, man, I'm just really big into marketing. I just want to go do what Russell says, right? Which one are you? So we help them identify that. Okay. So once we've identified whether they're tens, hundreds, or thousands, then are you a CEO, COO, or CMO? Okay. If they're none of those, then they have no business being in the coaching world. They need to go and work for somebody. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just go work for somebody. They've got all the infrastructure you need. You'll make $150,000 a year. You'll be great. So once I identify that, then we go to capacity. Okay. So what is your capacity and so capacity is this. So I have a 12-ounce coffee cup right here. If I have 24 ounces of coffee, I may want to consume 24 ounces of coffee, but my cup can only take 12 ounces. So then what we have to do is we have to identify where they are. What is your capacity? How much time do you have to give? How much money do you have to give? And once again, 10, hundreds, thousands. Then we determine whether the capacity they have is enough or whether we need to expand that capacity. Okay. And most of the time people need to expand their capacity. They need to be able to grow it so they can take more and do more. Okay. And then the next step, once we identify that, is, and this is the biggest question that most people don't know, is what do you want to become known for? What do you want to be known for? Right. So if I was to ask you, Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot. Chris, out of, let's say 1,000 people watch this podcast and they're following Chris. What does Chris want to be known for?
So for me, I want to change lives through real estate, like my life's been changed, and I want to help them scale their profits.
Okay, so scale profits, right? Okay, so then what I would tell you is it's too big of a bucket. Okay, so with your scaling the profit and scaling your real estate profit, what's one thing that you do in scaling real estate that you do as good or better than anybody else?
Connecting to find deals.
Connecting, okay. Okay, so then with connecting, what's one thing in connecting that you do as good or better than anybody?
Build relationships and following up.
Okay, follow-up. Okay, with follow-up, what's one thing in follow-up that you do better than anybody?
Personal thank you cards.
Nobody else sends thank you cards?
You asked me what I do better than anybody else. In my mind, that's what I do better than anybody else. But
okay, well, what about the thank you card? Is it just a card?
Yeah, just a non-branded card. Yep, just real simple.
Okay, so we could probably call that personal affirmation, like you affirm people with a thank you card, whatever. Okay, so then what you do is you come back and you connect all those pieces, right? Okay, so I want to be known as the person, and so then you go behind the why behind the what, right? So the what is thank you cards, but why do you do thank you cards?
Because it helps connect people, know that they're important.
Okay, so right. So what you do in order to scale is you work with your prospects and you help them feel incredibly important. It connects them to you, and now they trust you to bring you through the journey. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, then you don't have to spend millions of dollars in marketing, because you're doing personally what you're hoping money does marketing wise. Okay, and so now what you've done is you've created a unique niche. You've created a unique process, created a unique pathway, and then you can go all in and build that. Okay. And so that's one of the things in coaching when you're trying to figure out like your capacity is you have to really dial down and figure out like, what do I want to be known as? So my gut tells me, Chris, when you go to places, they're like, oh, you're the thank you card guy.
A lot of times it is. Yeah. It's funny. I don't think of myself that way, but it is. So.
Yeah. But it's not about you. It's about them, right?
Correct.
And so once you get to that, oh, you're the thank you card guy, then it's over. You can scale and you can leverage it. Russell Brunson for many years was known as the funnel guy. Okay. Joel Irway was the webinar guy. Okay. Alex Sharfin was the systems guy. Okay. You can go on and on and on and on. Grant Cardone was the real estate sales guy. Like if once you're known as the guy, now you know what you want to be known for, and it's easy to build a superpower around that. But most people don't know that. Most people don't know what they want to be known for. And so all they're doing is they're copying other people and hoping that the success that other people had will work. And when it doesn't work, they wonder why. And so you got to bring them back to square one. Anyway, that's my little ramble.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Chad, this has been a great episode today. You've dropped a ton of value, and this has been really great. A lot of great insights, and I think anybody who listens to this is going to have a ton of value. So where can people get in contact with you or find you if they want to reach out and get involved in what you have going on?
Yeah, so I'm a Facebook guy. I'm an old man, so I do Facebook more than Instagram. So you can just look me up, Chad Thibodeaux. You'll recognize my mug on Facebook. If you want to learn more about my coaching program, just go to midticket.net or cavucoaching.com. One of those, I would say actually go to midticket.net, and you can see about my mid-ticket program that we have up and running and going.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for your time today.
Chad.
I really appreciate it.
It was great.